Welcome to this webinar on powering your organization's journey for 2021. It will focus on increasing public engagement to support your fundraising efforts and fulfill your mission. I'm Mark Robison, Senior Consultant with Humane Network and co-host of the Shelter Success Simplified podcast. Our two presenters today are Bonnie Brown and Diane Blankenberg, founders of Humane Network. Humane Network is a nonprofit consulting organization that can help your organization with animal behavior training for staff, development, operations, strategic planning, recruitment, and more. You can outsource parts of your work to us, such as fundraising and communications. The first conversation with us is free with no obligation, so contact us at info@humanenetwork.org. You can find Bonnie and Diane's bios on the Humane Network website and see the rest of the team there too. And you can ask questions at any time during this session in the chat window. Just click the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom window to pop up that chat window. And ask them as they come to mind. We'll get to the questions at the end of the main presentation. Now I'll turn things over to Diane and Bonnie.
Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thrilled to have you all here today. This is the second part of our presentation on how to power your journey and increase public engagement in order to support your fundraising efforts and fulfill your mission. I'm Bonnie Brown.
And I'm Diane Blankenberg.
And we're both with Humane Network, as Mark mentioned. So today we're going to cover several different things, but two primarily. The first one is how to increase the visibility of your organization in your community. And the second one is how to increase community engagement. And we're going to talk about 5 different primary ways that you can increase community engagement with your agency or organization. So the first question is, what exactly is visibility? So visibility is the degree to which your organization has attracted attention and created awareness in your community. And there are 2 primary ways that you can increase your visibility. Of course, there are many, but these are 2 primary ones. One is media coverage, and the other one is playing an active role in your community that creates, good word of mouth, promotion, and buzz around what you do. So we're going to take a quick poll here. Can you share with us how effective you feel your organization's public communications have been? And I'm going to say beyond social media. Certainly social media is very important, but we want to explore a little bit beyond social media. So considering that, how would you say you have good, broad public recognition and support, that you guys do an okay job, and maybe it could be better, but it's not bad. And maybe you feel it's not too effective. And if this doesn't apply to you or you're not sure, you can answer that. Okay, so the majority, 50% of the people said that they do okay. Maybe there's room for improvement, but not bad. 33% feel that it's not too effective, and 8% feel that it's pretty good already, or are not sure, not applicable. So thank you for that. So that's really about what I would have expected, but good to hear where you guys feel you're at. So when you think about creating, increasing your visibility in the community, it relies on exposing people to your organization multiple times. People need to see or hear about something several times before they're going to support it or even really remember it, and certainly before they're going to act on something. And so people often wonder, well, how many times do they need to hear about our organization? And the old marketing rule was called the rule of 7, meaning that people within a year's time had to see or hear about you 7 times before they were going to take any kind of action. But now they feel that it's possibly even much longer because we are all so bombarded with information constantly. Now, the good news is that once you identify a story or something you want to put out there to the community, you can spread that information through multiple different channels, which increases the number of people that you'll see that will see your message, and also the potential that people will see your message in multiple places through multiple different channels or venues. Social media, of course, plays a really important role in reaching people. We find that many organizations do understand that, and some organizations tend to over rely on social media. So we want to just encourage you to think about it as though certainly you wouldn't have a communications plan that excluded social media. And likewise, you don't want to have a communications plan that's excluding more conventional media and other ways of connecting with the public in your community with your message. So we've mentioned a few times already during this series about the power of stories. And we just want to share a few more tips with you about identifying stories and finding stories. And one place I do want to point you to is Andy Goodman's website. He has a website that's really entirely dedicated to helping agencies tell their story. So you might want to take a look at that. He has some great resources like why bad ads happen to good organizations and things like that that I think you'll find helpful. So how do you come up with story ideas? We have a list of them here. I'm just going to highlight a couple because we'll get you a PDF of this presentation and you can come back to it and look at it more closely. But, watch the news and look for tie-ins. Keep your eye out for special animal stories and stuff that's happening in your organization that could really be newsworthy. For some media outlets or some communications channels, behind the scenes or on the front lines, stories can be really helpful for you. For example, if you could get someone from even an online media or local media to do a ride along with one of your officers or something, you could get out of it a great story. And, obviously there is the information on animal health and behavior issues, but I think you want to be sure that can get kind of tired. So you want to be sure that what you're doing is fresh, new, and interesting. So how to find these stories? And we had talked in previous sessions about doing walkthroughs, and that is a great way to identify stories. But also, be curious, ask questions of your team, and really take time to listen and really engage your team in this process of telling the community about the good work of your organization. So you want to involve your team in finding the stories and identifying them and brainstorming ideas. Another element in your success with improving community awareness of your organization is to be sure that you're creating a great impression. And the thing about humans is the first impression is really, it really kind of sticks with us. And fortunately or unfortunately, we make snap judgments as people. We really make a lot of the first impression, it's formed within a few seconds. So when you're talking about meeting a person, other people are, they're looking at their facial expression, they're judging them by their appearance and grooming, the tone of voice, their level of confidence. So those things matter. And you want to think about that when you're picking your organization's spokesperson, or if you are the spokesperson, those are the kinds of things you're going to want to keep in mind. Your facility really matters too. If they're going to be filming in there, you're sharing photos of the facility, you want it to be clean and uncluttered. Touches that convey warmth but not clutter, those are great. And lighting matters too. But often I find that people underestimate the importance of that. But you need to realize that for many people out there, if they see your organization as sloppy or not very clean, they may generalize that information to assume that you're also not doing a great job of taking care of the animals, which may not be true, but that's the impression they might get. So as you're thinking about increasing the visibility of your organization, you really want to plan your key messages carefully and run them by other people. Sometimes, we just are so insular, we talk to each other, but it can be really helpful to run what you're thinking of as the key messages by a friend or family member who is not involved in the field, or find an editor who can read and edit your materials before they're published, so that it's really going to reach the desired audience. And this Peter Drucker quote is an important one to remember. One can communicate only in the recipient's language or in their terms. So continuing down this road of thinking about your messaging when you're putting your organization out there, both the content and the tone really matter. And you need to think about, if you are uh, planning to say something, is it interesting? Is it something that people are going to be interested in listening to? You don't want to just prattle on or be long-winded. You want to be concise. If you're talking to the news media, they're going to cut down very short sound bites in many cases. So you want to plan what you want to say and keep it concise. You want to be sure that it's not condescending. Often in this field, we hear people talk about, how people should be responsible pet owners, or they say, our goal is to educate the community, or people need to be educated. Those things might make sense to us internally, but if you are the member of the public, they really sound kind of condescending. So you want to avoid those kinds of things. And our field is filled with jargon. So be sure that you're not using jargon when you're talking to the public, or either written or verbal communications that people outside of your organization are going to see. And what you do want to do is use words that are going to evoke positive emotions. And so it's rewarding. When you're talking about your foster care program, instead of talking about, what a commitment it is, maybe talk about how rewarding and fun it is. When you talk about adoption, talk about falling in love and finding your new best friend. And when you're talking to donors, talk to them about helping to save a life or helping to improve the quality of life for animals. Those are things that make people feel good. And the way people feel when they hear and see things about your organization is very important. So take a look at your logo and make sure that it reflects the image you would like to project for your organization. Logos, over time need to be replaced. And you can see two examples of logo redos here, in both cases with the newer version at the bottom. And I think you can see why over time you would want to change that, and why you especially look at the animal services logo. The first one is totally devoid of animals. And so the update is certainly more friendly and cheerful looking. So you also want to be thinking the same about your photos. Do the photos you're putting out there everywhere. And this is especially important on social media, because often there's only one person picking the photos and putting them out. So you want to be really clear about the standards you have for photos that go out about your organization. The photo on the left is a real photograph that was posted by a very wonderful organization. I think they were trying to get the dog adopted, as I recall. But you can see this photo doesn't really reflect the dog or the organization very well, what with food everywhere and poop, and, it just isn't the image you want to project. So, take the time to consider that and make sure your social media team understands what kinds of photos you want put out there, because people will judge you by them, unfortunately. And almost most importantly, in everything that you do, all of your ads, your marketing, the visual images that you create, the memes you put on your social media site, you really want to be sure that you're keeping it positive and fun. And these are just a few ideas here that you can certainly use for your own organization. And we have one more slide too that has some other just fun, upbeat feeling. They make you laugh and smile. Those are the kinds of things that you want to try to create for your organization. And if you don't have the expertise internally, seek a volunteer who can help you with graphics so that you can have the fun, upbeat, appealing graphics that you want. We're going to watch a video now because the same applies to your videos. You want to be sure that they're fun and, attention getting. So we have 2 to watch. We'll go with the first one now.
Well, I'm gonna play this one first because it's playing.
Okay.
Here we go.
So you get the idea. That was kind of fun and silly and appealing. I think the real one, which you can see online, is crisper, and we'll be sending you the links to these. Let's see if we can get this one to play for you.
It's not.
Okay, well, that's okay. We'll move
Play.
on and we'll send you the link so you can watch it. It's an Adopt a Cat Month promotion that is done in the style of a used car ad. You may have seen a few of them out there. And again, it's just fun, silly, puts a new twist on the whole thing, and sort of, to me, refreshes an event that could be kind of tired. So, okay, one more we want to share with you here is a promotion about a cat named Quilty. It's a kind of quirky name, but I assume it's a name he had because he was a senior cat that ended up in Friends for Life shelter in Houston, Texas. And Quilty had this annoying habit of letting all of the other cats in his cat room free. He did this repeatedly, so all the senior cats would get out and be running free through the shelter. Thanks to Quilty's ability and determination to open doors, and he opened cages, he just could not be contained. And so you can imagine that this is the kind of thing that does happen in shelters, and you could have just thought, oh, that's kind of funny. Maybe I'll tell a few of my coworkers about it. And that may have been it. But fortunately, someone at this organization saw the potential in this story, and it became an international news sensation. I listed only a few of the news outlets that picked it up, including the Daily Mail in Britain. And they also sold a lot of free Quilty merchandise with the little silly cat face there. And, it's just fun and silly. And I think it's the kind of thing that if you work with your team, like share this idea with your team and see if you guys can come up with stories like this when they happen in your organization real time, so you can use them to get the word out. Because this went so far, you can really imagine how it elevated the visibility of that organization, both locally, nationally, and even internationally. And so that can translate, depending on how you use that, to really increase your donations.
All right, so Bonnie's going to hand it over to me, and we're going to shift gears a little bit here from increasing visibility to community engagement. And I'm going to read this quote. I think it's meaningful. Community engagement is the process of building relationships with community members who will work side by side with you as an ongoing partner, building an army of support for your mission. We're going to do another quick poll here about community engagement. It says, how have your community engagement efforts been affected by the pandemic? No change. You've seen some benefits. There was a negative impact at first, but the changes that you made are now working, or it's just been a negative impact, or then again, not sure, not applicable.
Okay, I have the results. Let me share them. We had 0 people that said there was no change. We've had 8% that show some benefits. 31% said it was negative at first, but changes they made were working. 46% said there was a negative impact, and 15% said not sure or not applicable.
Wow. Well, not surprising. It kind of reflects some of the things that we've heard from various people that we work with in the field, especially those that had a negative impact at first, but then turned out that some of the changes actually were for the better. But especially for those of you that felt that it's only been a negative impact, I'm hoping that we'll be able to share some things that will hit home with you, and it'll be able to help you increase your community engagement in spite of the pandemic. So one of the most important assets you have going for you when you're trying to engage the community in your cause is your own enthusiasm for it. And as this quote says, enthusiasm is contagious, start an epidemic. So you want to be sure that you are getting that word out, and we're going to talk about some specific ways that you can engage the community. So what does it look like? It's obviously communication with the community. It's maybe providing specific activities or programs. It's welcoming in and valuing volunteers, even if they can't come physically to the shelter. There's still, and we're going to talk about that later, ways to engage them. It's collaborating with other organizations. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Engaging with local officials. Participating in community events. This is something we did a lot in Reno and Nevada Humane Society, and Reno tends to be one of those communities that loves their events and has something going on almost all the time, except when it's too cold. So just be sure you're piggybacking on everything that's happening in your own community. And then you also want to look at how you can engage the underserved parts of your community, and always being open to getting input and feedback. So why is it important? Well, here's a lot of great reasons here. It can obviously increase your public awareness and create true supporters who feel invested in your organization. And both of these things are ultimately going to increase your financial support, as well as other kinds of support like volunteering and so forth. It increases your understanding of the needs, so that people really know how to help and how to support the organization that will make the biggest difference. It makes sure that your organization is an essential, integral part of the community, making it aware and known as far as what the return is that it has on the community. What are the benefits? What is it doing for the community? How is it making it better? And of course, it helps engage new people to support the cause and the mission. So there's different ways that you can still conduct activities and events, even though we obviously are very limited of doing things in person because of the pandemic. So when you're thinking about putting on virtual activities or events, or maybe converting some that you already have into being virtual ones, these are 3 things that we feel that is helpful to consider, and need to make some decisions around that. And one is, what is your audience going to be? Certainly there's possibilities for having adult only or family oriented activities with children. We know some organizations have said it's been, they've had more engagement when it actually was adult focused, especially in this virtual environment. And are you going to provide these things for free, or are you going to charge some kind of a fee? Or you can do a combination of. One thing that we have seen other organizations do, and we've actually considered for something we have coming up, is to allow attendance for everybody. So it's not a requirement to pay, but to ask for a donation. And it's amazing how much people will donate, and sometimes even more than what you might have asked for. But it doesn't then eliminate people from engaging in it if they don't feel like they can or will be able to pay for it. And then you want to consider what kind of platform that's going to really suit that particular activity or event the best. You're probably all familiar with the platforms listed here, and I know there are plenty of others. These are some of the most common ones, but it's just important to make sure it's not only going to match what you're doing, but you also have the technical expertise to do it. And that may not be your thing, but it's quite likely that you have volunteers or supporters of some kind in your community that be willing to offer up their technical services. And then you want to look at what are the topics that are important and that are possible subject matters for one of these for a presentation. We've listed some here. I'm not going to read them all off. I've actually got a couple slides. There's a lot of organizations out there that are already doing things on these particular topics, or at least a subset of them. It's just good to look at the possibilities of what you think are going to really hit home best with your community and the particular makeup of your community. And this is not topics so much, but actual types of virtual activities. These are all things that have happened with different organizations. Some of them are things that our organization has done, or we've helped clients do, or that we have been made aware of. If you need help or want any more details on any of these, please reach out to us. We'd be glad to give you more information and even show you some examples of where they have been done and how they were done. But these are all possible ideas that will help you engage your community and also can be fundraisers in many cases. It's been challenging for some organizations during the pandemic because I think the kind of human tendency when we hit a roadblock is to think we can no longer do what we were doing, rather than trying to figure out maybe a different way of doing what we were doing. So there's certainly still ways to engage your volunteers during the pandemic, and maybe some of them are not that different from before, but it's just thinking about how you can have them do things that do not require a lot of gatherings or that in-person contact. So, obviously caring for animals does not necessarily have to have a lot of people around, and certainly people can care for them in their homes through foster care. But there's also some admin type things like data entry and writing thank you notes that can be done from home. And actually many of these can be done from home. So you need to look at what's going to work well for your organization. What do you need? And then to engage your volunteers and ask them specifically to help with these particular things. And here's some more ways that they can be engaged during the pandemic: getting involved in some of your virtual events and taking care of some things that, again, that can be outdoors or do not require the gathering of a lot of people. And at the bottom there, the professional skills, there's tons of ability in your support base. And it's just getting to know who can do what and is willing to do what. And probably there's a lot of people, especially now that people are still not able to live their normal lives, that it gives them satisfaction to be able to have purpose and do something to help the organization and use the skills or education that they have in order to do that. One of the things that I've noticed a lot with organizations that we work with is that they have a tendency to not want to manage volunteers. I think they often are frustrated sometimes with some of the activities or some of the behaviors of some volunteers, but they don't really want to manage them. And I believe they should be managed in the way you'd manage staff. But this is really a positive for you and for the volunteers. So when you're asking them, you want to be really specific on what you want them to do. And if it's a role that's kind of an ongoing thing, create job descriptions just like you do for your staff, so they really understand what their roles and responsibilities are. And then you want to be sure, even though we are restricted somewhat from the pandemic, that the training and the mentoring goes on. And there's certainly ways you can do that virtually through either like creating Facebook pages, if it's for foster caregivers, or just having virtual meetings. But you need to be sure that you're not neglecting them and providing that ongoing connection that will keep them motivated and engaged. So partnering with other organizations is certainly a great way to get more engaged in the community. And these organizations don't necessarily have to be animal organizations, but you can see different kinds of agencies here. Probably many of you have already partnered with some of them, but maybe there's other ways that you can find or other groups that you can find to partner with. And at the bottom there, there's 3 items listed there that are potential areas for collaboration. So these might be things you could think about that would then inspire you to identify groups that you could partner with. So whether it's programs or messaging that might be similar, or it's joint fundraising. So think about what would be beneficial as a collaboration point, and who would be the best people to work with on those things. And certainly you can always talk and meet with the other local EDs and CEOs of animal organizations, but also other nonprofit organizations. It's important to connect with your local officials before it's something that you really need their help for, so that you've developed those relationships with them. So it'd be important to plan a meeting, set up a time for your ED or your board members to meet with selected local officials. And of course, in any community and on any type of council or government agency, there's always people who are really motivated to support and inspired by animal welfare. So finding those people and meeting them and connecting with them and making sure they're aware of what you do and how you help the community. Then when you do need them, it's not a big surprise. Also connecting with local celebrities. Anybody mentioned this earlier. A lot of organizations, they wish for the famous national or even global celebrity, which is hard. It's hard to get that kind of connection, and especially in smaller areas. But you always have local celebrities, and these are people that your local community can truly identify with. So being able to identify them and again build the relationships with them, and find out a way. And often you'll find that there's some connection through your common supporters that you can use in order to build these relationships. And I mentioned this earlier about engaging in the community's events and activities. It's just a really great way to get your name out there, and you're piggybacking on what other organizations are already, or what the city or county is already putting on. So again, it builds up those partnerships, but it also is another way to have your name out there and be able to reach different kinds and sets of audiences that are going to attend different kinds of events. And another big area to engage with is the underserved part of your communities. And these are people that have either economic, geographic, or transportation, language, or some other kind of barrier to getting access to services for their pets. So it's always important to identify these segments of your community, and then find specific ways to engage with them. And you do that by also identifying their specific needs and how you might be able to meet those specific needs. A couple model programs that exist for engaging underserved communities are Pets for Life, and also One Health, which is access to vet care that ties into human services. So those are 2 you might want to check out. Other things that you might be able to do yourself or your organization can do, and of course at different degrees depending on the stage of the pandemic, but set up vaccination clinics, adoption events, and just other activities that you can do out in the community. Also, remote assistance, whether it's a telehealth or animal help desk model, we have plenty of information we can provide you on setting up an animal help desk if you reach out to us. You might be an organization that is a clinic or has a clinic within your shelter where you can provide more affordable vet care. And you can provide transportation. A lot of as I mentioned earlier, one of the barriers often for people getting access to care is, or access to any services, is transportation. And then of course, pet food banks, which are quite common, but providing delivery, especially again, for those that really cannot easily find transportation for it. So here's some ways in order to engage and approach these underserved communities. You can get local volunteers to help with the engagement, enhance return to owner efforts for lost pets, partnerships with other groups that already exist, especially the human service agencies. Again, you can piggyback on those. There's a organization here in Reno that provides vaccinations for humans, and several years ago they started including pet vaccinations because they felt they were trying to benefit the whole family, and to them the pets were a part of the family too. So there's ways that you again can partner with some of these other agencies that already have active programs, and certainly through your social media, as Bonnie was talking about earlier, is very important for outreach and getting your messages about the services that you have. All right, now I'm going to hand it back over to Bonnie Brown, and she will finish up the presentation.
Sure. So we're going to do one last quick poll with you. Beyond your social media presence, which again, I want to emphasize, it's important, but it's also important that you have, a presence beyond on the social media pages. So beyond your social media presence, does your organization seek input from the community? And you can pick which works best for you. Yes, we actively seek community input. We do, but it could be better. No, or not too much. And then, of course, if it's not applicable or you're not sure. So 57% said either no, or they don't have very substantial efforts to seek input from the community. 29% said that they do, but maybe there could be improvement, and 14% either doesn't apply, or they're not sure. So that's seems pretty normal to me, and gives us an opportunity to try a few things out. So one thing that I wanted to add here, I was thinking this while Diane was talking, is that it's really obvious why a nonprofit would do these things, because they need to get community support in order to raise donations. But animal services agencies too will find that if you have strong community support, you'll have a lot easier time with officials giving you the budget you really need. So I think there are benefits for all types of organizations to be doing this kind of community engagement that we've been talking about. So anyway, now we're going to focus on the input element. And some of the benefits are going to be obvious to you guys, but you will get a great opportunity to identify needs if you're asking the community, what they need. And effective program design, you'll be able to do better with your service delivery. And you'll also be increasing those really vital connections to the community that results in increased support, regardless of the type of entity you have. And this piece of advice just really resonates for me, which makes it challenging. Engage with a variety of different type of constituents, not just those that are the easiest to access. So here are a few ways that you could seek input from your community. If you have a large list of people who receive your emails, or you can put it out there through social media, surveys can work. You can convene focus groups, interviews with community leaders. Right now it would have to be virtual, but eventually you'll have an opportunity to do community meetings. Social media does work well for this, especially for getting the word out about some of these other strategies. And lastly is the concept of an advisory committee. And we are going to talk a bit more about this advisory committee concept. We can certainly help you with any of those ideas. If you just want more information, we're very happy to connect with you. We have sample surveys, for example. So the advisory committee, why would you even consider it? Because there is always the potential for challenges with anything like this. But there are ways that you can manage it to make it successful for your organization. And the reason why you might want to do that is because it really builds a group of people who feel invested in your organization's success. And it can also become a training ground for future board members for nonprofits. It's always hard to find great board members, and this can be a way to groom people for that role. So, what exactly is an advisory committee? And I do want to mention to you that we recommend you use the word committee and not board, because it prevents confusion that a board might be a decision-making body. And this is a body that gives you information and might make recommendations, but they don't really have authority to order change. So an advisory committee is a volunteer group that you form to give advice and support to you. And it says nonprofit, but really it could be any type of entity. So what you want to think about first is what type of advisory committee would work best for your organization. Now, some organizations have different committees. I would certainly recommend that you start with one, but it could be a group of community representatives that get together to provide input to you on your work, or it could be community leaders or prestigious former board members that primarily are lending their name to your organization and maybe meeting only infrequently. Or you could create an advisory committee of prospective donors, people who in the community who you would like to have become your donors, offering them a forum to give you advice, and hopefully over time to convert them into actual donors. So how do you start an advisory committee? The first step is to create a committee charter or a written description, and it needs to include all of these things. I don't want to take up our time going over them now. We'll give you a PDF of this presentation, and we're also just happy, as I said, to talk with you about it if you have questions. So once you've created that written description of the committee, you're going to want to select committee members. And it really is important to select the committee members and not just put anyone on the committee who raises a hand. So there are ways you can do that through an application process to make sure that you're getting people that are going to meet your needs on the committee. And then you want to appoint a chair from the people who've been selected, or you can allow the committee to appoint the chair. It's really important that you select a staff person who's going to attend all the meetings and act as liaison and support that committee, making sure that meetings are set up and that everything goes smoothly. And also importantly, you want to be sure that you're providing all the committee members with necessary background information or training so that they understand your organization's mission, they're really clear on the scope of the committee's work, and that their roles are clear. So you just want to be sure that you're providing them all the information they need to do a good job. And that includes the limitations of what their function is. So with that, I just really want to thank you so much for making time in your busy day to join us. We really feel that community engagement and efforts to increase the public visibility of your organization can really make a huge difference in your success in terms of fundraising and in terms of community support. When in times of trouble, be it a natural disaster or a budget crunch or any number of things, a hoarding case, any number of things that can suddenly come along and throw a wrench in the works, like say even a pandemic, having these people in your community who feel invested in your success, who really love your organization and want it to succeed. Those people will come through for you, especially when you need them most. So it's really well worth the investment in creating strong community connections and increasing the awareness in your community of what you do. So anyway, this is the last of our Shelter Success Simplified webinars. We will be sending you a survey in a few days or so, and hope that you will give us feedback so that we can be more effective in helping you going forward. And with that, I'm going to hand things back to my colleague, Mark Robison.
Okay, so now's the time for the Q&A portion. And so if you've got any questions to ask, click the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom window, and a chat window will pop up, and you can ask a question to everyone or just to me. And you pick my name from that drop down. And so let's go to the first question here, which is, so we've got an advisory committee, but some members get upset when we don't do what they say. How can we handle this situation better?
Yeah, that is challenging. I think part of it is creating really clear expectations with the advisory committee members. And while it would be ideal to do that at the outset, you can still do it now. It would require producing something in writing. Maybe this even exists and you just need to remind people of it. But you could certainly have a meeting with the advisory committee or with the advisory committee chair, if that person is someone you can work with, which hopefully they are, and talk about the role of the committee and trying to keep the committee on track. I also find that one-on-one conversations with people can help when they're really upset, and you can use active listening to repeat back what they are expressing concerns about. And then once they feel heard, you are in a better position to respond in such a way that they'll be able to hear your response. It may be good to do this one-on-one or with you and the chair and the individual, or there may be a reason to address it with the entire committee. Diane, do you have any other recommendations on managing the advisory committee?
Yeah, I was just going to build on your point about having clear expectations, because I think it's important for the role in general, but it's also important whenever there's a particular topic that comes up, because you can also just clarify at that time, if you're discussing something, what the desired outcome is from it. Is it just brainstorming to try to get some ideas that then become input to somebody else or some other group that's making a decision, or is it actually to make a decision, or to be really clear on what the desired outcome is of whatever the topics of discussion are.
Yeah, and I would suggest in general that an advisory committee's function, which you'd want to lay out there really clearly in a charter, is to give advice and input. It's really not to make decisions, because they're not the board of directors and they're not the executive director or CEO.
Okay, the next question is from Shelley, that is a spinoff of the last one. What is the best frequency for advisory committee meetings?
So I'll take that first, and then Diane will jump in. I think it depends on the purpose of the advisory committee. Some people have advisory committees that are primarily formed from extremely busy people in the community who are essentially just lending their name to your organization. So, if you have council people on your committee and former board people who've retired or are, they're termed out of being on your board, but they still have lots of valuable connections in the community. I mean, their role could simply be to meet once a year or twice a year, where you give a short presentation to update them, and they share their thoughts with you, and that they are also there to help you when you need help. So say you have 2 attorneys on there, you're able to call them when you need assistance or advice. And so it could be quite infrequent, with the idea that they would be available to you to help. On the other hand, if I had formed an advisory committee that was, say, of prospective donors or people who were in the community who weren't yet engaged with us, but I wanted them to be, or if it was an advisory committee of community representatives and we wanted their input on what we were doing and how well it was working, I think those you would want to have more frequent. And I would suggest, every month or every other month. But I think it's highly dependent on the purpose. Diane, do you have any other advice on that?
No, I just was gonna say I wouldn't do it more than once a month. It probably for any of the groups, but yeah, it totally depends on the makeup of the advisory committee and the purpose of it. You could even have, meetings that were set up as needed if there was a particular topic that was critical at the time. But most people, like Bonnie said, they're super busy and they usually prefer to have a set time and a set frequency. So it's known and it's on their calendar.
Yeah, and you can even create a charter for your advisory committee that has a limit. The advisory committee could only last for 6 months, or it could last for a year. So it doesn't have to be a perpetual thing. It's just really important to include that when you set it up.
Okay, next question is, what are some things that volunteers should not do, or that perhaps need special training before allowing them to do?
Diane, do you want to start on that?
Wow, well, that's a big question. Could talk about that for a while, but I believe that most things, and I'm sure there are certainly exceptions, like things that require certain, like in a clinic that there's certain medical requirements or degree requirements or legal requirements, but most things in a shelter, I think volunteers can help with in some way. But I do believe that everybody probably should get some training. So whether it's just understanding the organization better and understanding their role better, and that's going to vary because, like I said earlier, if you're bringing in professionals that already have certain skill set, they may not need to have training on their expertise, but they may need to have training on how it's going to be applied or used for your organization, because you want to be sure that it fits within the boundaries of your mission and of your policies and your procedures. So I guess I would tend to approach that with more open and expansiveness than narrowing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the key there is defining what skills are needed for that volunteer opportunity. So, it's true that in the clinic, you have to have a veterinarian performing what only veterinarians can do, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get some volunteer veterinarians. So it's just defining to me what the role is and what skill set do you need for the person to be successful in that role. And I totally agree with Diane that being clear up front, having volunteer job descriptions and having boundaries, but also having those check-ins. I'm a big fan of the trust but verify approach to things. So I think, to have someone who's checking in and making sure that things aren't going off the rails is important. So to me, every volunteer, every staff member should clearly know what team they're on and who they report to.
Okay, well, I would add one thing to what was discussed earlier about the cultivating community support, which is another great reason for having that is that if your organization is ever attacked, those supporters are often the first ones who will come to your defense, especially on social media. So it's a great thing to have lots of good connections in the community. And so that does it for this session and this series. On Friday, I will send out a recording link to this video and the supplemental documents that were mentioned. And then next week, we'll send out a final email that will kind of compile everything. And so it'll have links to all of the video, supplemental documents, and PDFs of these presentations so that you have them all in a handy place. And this web series was supported by Petco Foundation and presented by Humane Network. The Petco Foundation is launching a new national Lost and Found Pets initiative. And you can learn about it, including related grant opportunities. There's a deadline March 1st and another one March 31st at petcofoundation.org/lostpets. And so if you'd like to be notified of future webinars, sign up for the Shelter Success Simplified e-newsletter at the bottom of our website at humanenetwork.org. And thank you for all your work helping animals.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.